it's Chloe from Chloe's Creative Cards, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create this lovely princess dress project. Let me pop that in on the other camera so you can have a little look at that one there. So you might have seen this one that we've shared on socials. So we've shown it as kind of a shorter reel, but I thought today we would do a little bit more of an in-depth tutorial using this one to show you how to build that dress up and create those lovely 3D layers. So what I'll do is I'll pop the overhead camera in and then we can have a little look at how to create this project. So I'll just pop that down and we'll go in on the overhead there. So we're going to be creating this project. We're going to be stamping and embossing onto some pearl card, onto some vellum and onto some acetate as well to create this really pretty kind of three-dimensional dress project. So what we're going to do to start with is we are going to take our card blank, which I've literally just had in my little mitts and I've popped it down somewhere. There it is. So I've got my card blank and I've trimmed this down to 6 inches by 8 inches. So it's what I tend to do is just trim it from an 8 by 8 card blank. So it's literally just under 6 inches across and then 8 inches down. I've then taken a piece of silver mirror card, which we're going to stick down flat onto the base of our card. Now for this project, we've done the original one in pink. As you've maybe seen this a couple of times before, I thought it'd be really nice to do it in a different colour. So we're going to do this one in blue instead. So I've got my mirror card and I've got a little bit of Dries Clear PVA glue here. So we're going to take our glue and just pop a little bit onto the back of the mirror card. Now, I personally like to use glue when I'm doing my mats and layers because it just gives you that little bit of time to kind of wiggle things about if it's not quite in the right place. So what we can do is take this. We can then pop this down onto our base card and stick that down flat. Now, of course, as always with your mats and layers, you can be gutting these if you want to. So if you want to cut a shape from out of the middle before you stick it down, you go for that and do that. I'm just doing it this way for the demo today because I always get the layers wrong when I try gutting things. So we're just going to stick with the plain mats and layers for now. So next up, I've taken our lovely scalloped and pierced square dies, and these are fabulous. So these work, you've got a scalloped and then a pierced die, so these are great for your mats and layers. If you are watching the video when this is going out live on, I believe, the 6th of June, this die set is coming back in stock, so please keep a little check on the website. We're just waiting for them to arrive with us. So I'm going to take this out of frame, which is the largest one, that's the scalloped one, and I've got a lovely piece of blue patterned paper from our Chic boutique paper pad. So we're going to take our paper, pop our die down onto here, and then I'm going to take a little bit of low tack tape. I'll just grab some scissors to cut it because I took mine next door with the with my little tape dispenser. So we'll take a bit of tape and just stick this down. So that's going to go there, and then we'll stick that one there. And then we're going to grab in our die cutting plates. So I'm going to use my base plate, my metal shim, my plastic shim, and then my cutting plate on the top. The metal shim is up to you if you want to put that in. My machine is getting a little bit older and it's well used, so it just needs a little bit of extra pressure now. So we're going to send that through our Gemini machine like so. And then we'll grab that at the other side when it's finished. There we go, so we'll bring that back in and then you can see how we've got our lovely little mat and layer perfectly die cut out. So we're going to use this kind of blue layer first. So what I'm going to do before I stick this down, a little technique that we like to do is we like to edge along the side of the cards. So what I'm going to do is take my chisel tip glue pen, which is this one here, okay, and I'm going to take a little bit of our lovely Crystal Crush glitter. So I have this one in a big tub because we do use it a lot. So what you're going to do is take your Crystal Crush glitter, open up your little pot, and then you're going to take your chisel tip glue pen, and I'm going to take some scrap paper as well, just so that we can work onto this. So you're going to take your chisel tip glue pen, you're going to hold that pen at about a 45-degree angle, and then you're just going to drag it towards yourself. And then dunk that in the glue, and you can see how it then gives you this lovely straight line just going along the edge of your little mat there. So we're just going to work round, adding that little bit of glue just along the side here. Like so, and then you can see how we've got that lovely little sparkly border just going around the edge. So what we're then going to do is stick that down onto our card blank. So we'll use some foam pads for that. Just move that plate out of the way there. So flip that over. I'm going to use some of our foam pads. Of course, I'm using our foam pads on a roll, which are fab. If you haven't seen these before, please do have a little look on our website, chloescreativecards.co.uk. We've got them all on there, but they are brilliant. So you can just peel the backs off of your foam pads like this. Okay, just grab my bin. And then we'll stick that down onto our card blank like this. So you can see how this is starting to come together now. We're then going to take our piece of white card. So we've die cut that white card and we've used the little pierced kind of rectangle from here on this one. So you can see how that's then giving you that pierced detail just along the edge of the die cut there. So then we'll flip this over. Again, I've got foam pads on the back of here. It's completely up to you. If you don't want to use as many foam pads and make the card a little bit flatter, of course you can be doing that too. So we'll stick this layer down just onto our piece of card there. And then for the next layer, we've taken this lovely kind of blue floral patterned paper. So it's actually the reverse of that paper that we used for the first matting layer. And we've die cut that out from the next size down in the rectangles. So it'll be this one here. So we've just die cut that out and we're going to stick that flat onto our card. Now again, I've already gone ahead and kind of edged this just with a little bit of that Crystal Crush glitter. So a bit of glue just onto the back like so. And then we're going to stick this down flat onto our card blank. There we go. And then next up, I'm going to take some little jewels. So I'm using one of our bling boxes. This one is the Winter Wonderland bling box. And I'm going to use these kind of blue jewels, I think, that we've got here. So I want about 12 of those because we're going to put 3 in each corner. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Dries Clear PVA. And I'm just going to go in and add 3 little dots of glue into the corner, and then I'll pick up my little gem pick-up tool, and then we're going to go in, pick these up and just stick them down. Lots of you do ask where I've got this little tool from as well, and honestly it was from a nail art kit from years ago on Amazon. So just have a little look. It's not branded or anything like that, but it is just handy for picking your little jewels up. You can of course use tweezers as well if you prefer, but when I do that I tend to end up pinging them halfway across the room, so we'll stick with the little pick up tool I think at the moment. So we're going to just take these and just pop them onto our card. So again, I'm using the middle size, and this is from our Winter Wonderland bling box. So in here, you've got kind of all turquoises and blues, really pretty colours. But again, not just for Christmas, as we're proving today. So we're going to stick these ones down, just onto there. Like so. So you can see how that's our card base kind of coming together a little bit now. So what I've then done is taken one of our decorative dies. So this is the 5x7 decorative ovals die. And I've die cut this out from a piece of silver mirror card, and we're going to stick that down in the middle. And you can see all of that lovely kind of lacy detail that you've got around the edge as well. It's really pretty, this one. So we'll take that one and we'll stick that down just into the middle of our card like so. And then we've got the next size down in that die set, which is just a plain oval. So we've just die cut that from some white card and just gone around the edge with that Crystal Crush glitter. We'll take a little bit of glue and just stick that down. So then if I pop this on the other camera, let me just have a little look. There we go. Hopefully you can see, if I move that pin out the way, that's very annoying. You can see how our little mats and layers are coming together and how that's creating the base for our card. So what we're going to do next is we're going to start to create that beautiful dress design. So I'll pop the overhead camera back in and then you can have a little look at the finished sample. So this is what we're going to be creating in the next part of the video. So to do that, you are going to need our lovely princess dress stamp and die set. And then we're also going to use some little bits of card. Now you don't necessarily need full sheets to do this. Let me just grab my little bits and pieces from along the table. So we're going to be using some Aquamarine pearl card, some of the Aquamarine Vellum, and then we've got a little bit of white card as well, just to kind of use for the top of the dress and the little hanger. And then we've got some silver mirror card that we're going to die cut the flowers out of. And I have got a piece of heat resistant acetate, but I'm just keeping that out of the way for the moment so that it doesn't kind of get covered with glitter or anything that we don't want it to. So to start off, we're going to take our dress stamp. So we'll peel this away from our little acetate backing. And then we're going to take our acrylic block, which we've got here. And we're just going to place our stamp down onto there. Okay. We're going to take our piece of Aquamarine pearl card and give it a little dust over with an anti-static bag. And what that helps to do is it's just going to help to get rid of any fingerprints or anything that might be on kind of your paper or your card. We're then going to take a clear embossing ink pad. So the one that I like to use is the Wow Clear embossing ink pad, and this is fabulous. This is great for kind of, it's a sticky ink pad, so it's going to let all of those kind of embossing powders and embossing glitters just grab onto them. So we'll ink this up. So you want lots of tapping all over the image, like this. And then we're going to position that down onto the card. And you want firm, even pressure all over the image. Like so. And then we'll just lift this out. Okay. And then we're going to take a little bit of scrap paper again, which I've got over here. And we're going to use the Wow Metallic Silver Sparkle embossing glitter on here. So this is a really nice sparkly silver. So we're going to sprinkle that over and then just tap away any excess. I'm going to pop that to one side because it's not too warm in here. So I'm going to stamp my vellum one as well, and then we'll just heat them up at the same time. So we'll take our stamp back in and we're going to take our clear embossing ink pad. We'll give our stamp a little ink up there. Then we'll grab our vellum in. We'll give that a little dust with our anti-static bag. Position that down and press. So again, you want firm, even pressure all over that stamp. And then we're going to lift that off. Grab back in our bit of scrap paper. Sprinkle over our embossing powder. Pop that in the jar. And of course, you're only using a very small amount of that embossing powder as well. So next up, I'm going to take my heat tool and just start to heat these up. Okay. There we go. And I'd just like to give that a little second just to kind of cool down. But what we're going to do now is we will take our bit of low tack tape, because you know we all like to hold on to that and use it lots of times. So pop our die set over there out of the way. And we're going to take our little dress die that comes with this one. I'm going to cut my bit of low tack tape just in half. And I've got 2 bits there. So what you're then going to do is just line up the die over the dress. And then again, we're going to die cut this one out. So we'll use our base plate, our metal shim, our plastic shim, and then our cutting plate on the top. And we'll just send this through the Gemini. Let me pick that up and send that through. Move that embossing powder out the way there so that you can see that's just going through the machine. And then we'll just grab that and bring that back to the front there. And then when we push that through, you've got your dress perfectly die cut out. So what I've done is I've got one that's already dried that I did at home earlier. So we've got our first one, and all I've done is I've just gone in and added some little kind of dots of PVA glue. So I've just gone in, little dots, and then popped a little bit of that Crystal Crush glitter just straight over the top. So that's just going to give the dress that little bit of sparkle. So what we're going to do now is take our vellum layer and we're going to grab a pair of scissors. And what we're going to do is just cut, kind of following the lines on the stamp, and just kind of cut the dress up like this, which it looks a little bit random, but stick with it because it does look good when it's finished. Like this, okay? So then we're going to take this and we're just going to give it a little bit of a squish. So that's then going to give a little bit of movement to that dress. So what you can then do is take a little bit of a foam pad. So I've got a foam pad here. A little bit onto there. And then we're going to turn that round and just stick that down on the top like that. Okay, so you can see how you've then got this little bit of movement going on with the dress now, which is really pretty. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do a little bit of stamping and embossing onto heat resistant acetate. So I'm going to grab my heat resistant acetate in. I've popped it at the other side of the counter, well out of my way because it always gets so staticky. So there used to be kind of a bit of a tip with this where you could dust it with an anti-static bag and it worked and it was fabulous. But I don't know what's happened with heat resistant acetate recently, but it just doesn't seem to be quite as anti-static as it used to be. So pop your acetate down. I'm not going to use an anti-static bag with it because sometimes I've found it makes it a little bit worse, or sometimes it makes it a little bit better. It depends on the acetate. So if you want to use an anti-static bag, you can dust over like this and make sure that you've got plenty of anti-static on there. But the one thing that you do then need to be careful of is that the anti-static doesn't cling to your clear embossing. So what I tend to do is do a little bit and then flick it, and then it kind of takes a little bit of the excess off. So again, I'm just going to ink my stamp up. So I'm using my clear embossing ink pad. And I'm going to just ink my dress stamp up. I'm not doing it on top of my acetate because obviously I don't want to kind of get any ink onto there in areas where we don't want it. So we'll ink our stamp up. And we're going to place that down on the acetate, and then you want to use a firm, even pressure just to press and keep one hand on the stamp at all times because you don't want that stamp to slide and move. We're then going to carefully peel that off. I don't know if I've just moved that a little bit there. It might be all right. And then we'll take another bit of scrap paper, which I've got here. I'm going to cover that with our metallic silver superfine, metallic silver sparkle, sorry, embossing powder. So we're going to sprinkle that over the top and then tap away any excess. And actually that hasn't gone too static, that's stamped really well. But what I do tend to do is just give the acetate a bit of a flick as well. So I've just done that over the bin, just off camera there. Okay, then we'll pop that back into the jar and we'll heat this up. So you're going to go in with your heat tool Holding that heat gun still until that embossing powder melts and changes, and you'll find it'll go really quick on the acetate. There we go. So you can see how we've then got that lovely dress heat embossed onto there. So what I've then done is just gone in with scissors and cut that out. So here's one that I did earlier. And then I've gone in and just added some little dots of PVA glue again and popped a little bit of that crystal crushed glitter onto there. So what we're going to do is cut the bottom kind of trim of the skirt off. Let me grab in my scissors. So we're going to cut this bottom part away like this. So it's kind of like the bottom frill of the skirt, if that makes sense. And I'm going to go in and snip with our scissors again, all the way to the centre of that bodice, like that. Okay, and then what you can do with this layer is you can kind of just crease bits of the acetate up at the waistline like that. Looks a bit weird, but trust me, it's going to look good when you stick it together. So then we can take just a little bit of PVA glue and just stick that down onto here. Okay. So you can see how we're starting to get all of that depth and dimension in the dress now. So what you can then do is you want to take the bodice of the dress, okay, which is just this bit here. So you're going to just trim that off like this, okay, and then you're going to go in with your dry clear PVA glue and just glitter it up and pop a little bit of that crystal crush over the top. Now I'm going to snip off the little straps which are from the vellum layer, like this. There we go. And then we're going to stick this layer on just with a little foam pad. It's going to get stuck onto there. So you can see how that's starting to come together now. So then next up, I've taken, see all of the little flowers that you've got in this set here? They all die cut out individually. So we've taken a little scrap of mirror card and just die cut those out, and then you can pop them onto the bottom of the dress. Now before I do that, I've got a tiny little bow that I've just tied from a bit of satin ribbon, and that's just going to go in the middle here, along with, of course, a little sparkler, just to add that extra little bit of bling. Okay, and then we're going to take these little flowers, which are just die cut from little scraps of silver mirror card, but then you can just kind of position them onto the base of your dress. Got a few more over here. Pop one there, maybe. Then we've got a couple of like smaller ones as well, which are pretty. That one there. Pop another one there. And then you can see how we've added those flowers onto the dress. Now, of course, now you were going to need a little hanger to hang that lovely dress on. So within the stamp set, you've got a little coat hanger. So this is the bit that I trimmed off my card blank from earlier. So we'll take a little piece of that. And then we're going to take our stamp and die set in, and I'm going to take the little coat hanger stamp, and I'm going to grab an acrylic block just to pop this onto. And I'm also going to take my VersaFine Clear ink pad in Morning Mist. I'm going to ink up my stamp like that. Stamp that down. Then you can either leave it just as the ink pad, or if you want to, you can take a little bit of clear gloss super fine embossing powder. Just sprinkle that over the top. Tap away any excess. And then we can take our heat tool. And just quickly heat that up. And then we can take our little coat hanger. Just make sure that's dry. Pop that over the top with a little bit of low tack tape. like that. And then I'm going to grab my cutting plates back in and send this through the machine. So there we go. And then we'll just grab that when it gets to the other side. Pop this out. There we go. We've got a lovely little die cut coat hanger there, ready to pop our dress onto. So to stick that down, all I tend to do is just take a little bit of my Dries Clear PVA, pop a tiny little bit of glue just onto the straps of the dress, and then you can just position that down onto the little coat hanger, like so, she says, like so. And just stick that there. Okay. And then we're going to flip that over and pop a couple of foam pads just onto the back of here. And then we'll grab our card blank in and we're nearly done. So I'll pop that to one side. Grab my little card blank back in, and I'm just going to pop that down just to the side like so. Okay, and then what we'll do next is we'll take a sentiment. So I'm going to use a one from the little fashion, the Chic Boutique sentiments. So let me just grab that stamp in. So we'll go for Some Girls Just Sparkle. Again, just taking an acrylic block, popping your little stamp onto there, and then a little bit of clear embossing ink just to ink that up, and a little bit of anti-static just onto our card, and then we can just position that sentiment down and press. And then we can take a little bit of our embossing powder. So rather than using the glittery one, seeing as it's a sentiment, I'm just going to use my metallic silver super fine. This is the polished silver. So that then picks up all of that detailing of the text and gives you almost like a chrome-like finish when you heat it up. So then we'll take our heat tool. We're going to hold that still and just heat that up. And then we'll pop that just give that a couple of seconds just to kind of cool down a little bit. And then we can take our guillotine and just trim this down. I might have just taken a fraction. Oh no, just enough. I thought I'd take a little bit too much off there. So we can then take our little chisel tip glue pen again and go in with that crystal crushed glitter. Let me have a look. I've popped it underneath the counter. There we go. So we can take our chisel tip glue pen and we can just go in, add that little bit of glitter just along each edge here, like that. Okay, and then we're going to take our guillotine, take a little bit of PVA glue just onto the back of that sentiment, take a little bit of silver mirror card, just map that onto there, trim that edge off, and then we'll take a couple of foam pads just onto the back of there like so. And then we'll add that on at a little bit of an angle, and that would then be your finished project. So let me pop the blue and the pink next to each other, and then you can have a little look at those two. Let me just move all of my bits and pieces out of the way. So I'll pop the other camera in so you can have a little bit of a closer look. So we've got the lovely blue and the lovely pink. So those are the projects that we have been creating today. So that is used now a lovely princess dress, stamp and die set. And I really hope you've enjoyed making those cards with me. Now, as always, we have got all of the products that I've used listed in the description below. And of course, you can shop them all online at our website, which is www.chloescreativecards.co.uk. If you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I hope to see you again here very soon. Thank you for joining me. Bye.